12 years after O.J. Simpson spoke on Digicam approximately the murders of his ex-spouse and her pal Ron Goldman, the interview is being made public. It became the trial that stopped the USA in its tracks. A celebrity, a double murder, and a verdict that sparked decades of debate. But past the headlines and excessive pace chases lies a tangled net of moments that also depart even seasoned prison minds scratching their heads. 11 portions of this puzzle refuse to in shape. From courtroom choices that backfired in actual time to at least one witness whose silence stated more than phrases ever may want to. 1 second in particular meant to seal the case have become a haunting photo of doubt. Why have been a few voices omitted while others unraveled the entirety? What vital thread did the prosecution miss while chasing the highlight? The answers aren't as neat as you would possibly count on. In truth, the deeper you pass, the extra questions appear to rise to the surface. Cross-examination of Mark Fuhrman. In the O.J. Simpson trial, the testimony of Mark Fuhrman, one of the first police officers to arrive on the crime scene, turned into first of all taken into consideration crucial to the prosecution's case. Fuhrman had been the only to discover the bloody glove on Simpson's belongings, a chunk of bodily proof believed to directly hyperlink Simpson to the slayers. For the duration of his initial testimony, Fuhrman appeared composed and expert, providing clear debts of his actions throughout the investigation. His position became intended to boost the reliability of the LAPD's evidence amassing system. But, the situation unraveled dramatically for the duration of MOVE exam through famed defense legal professional F. Lee Bailey. In a key second, Bailey requested Fuhrman whether he had ever used the N-word. Fuhrman denied ever doing so, an announcement that would prove to be deeply detrimental. The defense had acquired hours of taped interviews between Fuhrman and a screenwriter in which he not most effective used repeated racial slurs, however additionally said police brutality, falsifying reports, and even boasted about how easily a police officer ought to escape with slaying. These revelations severely undercut his credibility as a witness. The ripples of tragedy threatened to affect the prosecution almost without delay. Fuhrman changed into ultimately indicted for perjury, mendacity below oath, and brought return to the stand to answer questions on whether or not he had planted evidence. Whilst he refused to answer, he invoked the Fifth Amendment. This turned into a crushing blow to the prosecution's case, allowing protection legal professionals to argue that a considerable piece of proof, specifically the glove, may additionally have been planted. The LAPD's credibility in this situation became placed beneath excessive scrutiny, and the concept of a racist cop concentrated on Simpson had become close to a powerful narrative for the protection. Even participants of the prosecution team found out that reliance on Fuhrman was a big mistake. Murphy admitted in a PBS interview that they knew Fuhrman turned into going to be trouble, however did so anyway, possibly because they figured his role in locating the glove became too vital to omit. That gamble failed miserably. Fuhrman's pass examination went directly to come to be one of the maximum essential turning points in the trial, as it left an indelible mark of doubt on the integrity of the LAPD and likely weighed heavily in the jury's ultimate choice to acquit. If you notion Fuhrman's fall became jaw-dropping, just wait until you see what the prosecution failed to do with the DNA. Underutilization of DNA evidence. Notwithstanding the groundbreaking ability of DNA evidence within the O.J. Simpson trial, the prosecution largely underutilized what turned into arguably its most powerful asset. Forensic scientist Gary Sims testified that blood observed in Simpson's white Ford Bronco contained DNA from no longer simply Simpson, however additionally Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. This became incredibly considerable as Simpson and Goldman had by no means met before. For the night time of the slaying, strongly suggesting that Goldman's blood in Simpson's automobile turned into no twist of fate. But, this essential connection became not given the prominence it deserved for the duration of the trial. The prosecution, led via Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, regarded unable to provide the DNA evidence in a compelling and digestible manner. Whilst Clark stated the presence of Goldman's blood inside the Bronco at some point of her remaining argument, it came amid a barrage of different facts that in all likelihood careworn instead of persuaded the jury. This loss of readability and prioritization intended that jurors had been now not absolutely guided to comprehend the burden of the DNA findings, which had they been honestly and correctly presented, might have been a pivotal component in securing a conviction. This distraction from the proof additionally indicated a similarly deviation from the trial method, which it can be said consisted basically in drawing the jurors' interest onto less critical or too complex details to lessen the jurors' ability to view the proof holistically. Consistent with a member of the prosecution team, William Hodgman, they may have been giving the jury an excessive amount of credit score with admire to being capable of comply with the intricacies of the proof because it came collectively piece by piece slowly over months. It's been dragging on for over a year, and plenty of the DNA analysis ended up getting lost in the noise of unrelated or tangential fabric. Near the quid of the trial, Darden simply echoed a lot of Clark's earlier remarks without being able to condense evidence into a clean and persuasive message. With recognized to the proof, by the time deliberations have been starting, the prosecution's case, which includes arguably its most critical piece of clinical evidence, had become clouded. In assessment to all the drama of gloved demonstrations and racially tinged go-examinations that colored the trial storyline, the DNA proof changed into nearly handled as an afterthought, albeit very probative. This blunder significantly undermined the prosecution's case and offered an open door for the defense to elevate affordable doubts, superstar treatment, and delayed arrest. Regardless of the presence of early bodily proof linking O.J. Simpson to the crime scene, such as blood stains on his white Ford Bronco and a bloody glove observed on his property, Simpson turned into no longer straightaway arrested following the slayers of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. After flying to Chicago past due at the night of the slayers, he backed to law through midday on June 13, at which factor he changed into puzzled by police, but nevertheless allowed to go unfastened. His arrest did not occur until June 17, 4 days after the slayers, prompting sizable public confusion and criticism over the obvious leniency shown to him. To many observers, the postpone regarded incomprehensible, mainly thinking about the proof already in hand. As one news report stated, 20 minutes after O.J. took off, his ex-spouse and a chum have been determined lifeless. Beneath ordinary instances, a suspect with such proximity to the crime, paired with forensic links, would probably have been detained without delay. However, Simpson's reputation as a cherished sports activities determined and public superstar appeared to manage to pay for him a stage of protection from the form of rapid regulation enforcement reaction others might have faced. Inside the quite famous Nicole Brown Simpson slaying case, legal theorists asserted that a celebrity double standard can also exist. In an interview with PBS, UCLA law professor Peter Aronella mentioned the elements regarding Simpson's celebrity repute that justified specific treatment on the arms of the police. As a substitute, as he positioned it, detectives handled him now not like a crook suspect, however like a movie star. A statement intended to imply that a mean character wielding comparable incriminating evidence would truly have been taken into custody without delay. This commentary initiated mounting concerns regarding the problem. The untoward impact of celebrity upon a criminal technique. Such an early failure to deal with Simpson as a regular suspect sent shock waves via the investigation and the eventual trial. It would have been a clean signal that Simpson changed into below special consideration. This broken not simplest the public perception of the justice system's objectivity, but it also gave leverage to Simpson's defense group early on. The idea that for a time O.J. turned into above the regulation became the very fodder for the later contention that both racial and institutional biases operated. Subject matters the protection would adroitly interweave into their court method. The Ford Bronco police chase. On June 17, 1994, 4 days after the slayings of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, the Law Police Department officially announced that O.J. Simpson changed into a suspect and that they were actively in search of to arrest him. With the aid of this time, public hobby in the case had grown substantially, and the announcement that one in every of the US most famous athletes would possibly go on the run created an experience of urgency and disbelief. The concept that Simpson, as soon as liked sports activities icon, would possibly evade justice, dispatched shock waves through the media and the public. As tensions rose throughout the day, Simpson's whereabouts were unknown till around 6 p.m. when he in my opinion called 911, reporting that he was in the again seat of a white Ford Bronco. The automobile became owned and being driven via his longtime pal Al Cowings. Simpson turned into reportedly maintaining a gun to his own head, threatening self-harm while the Bronco moved slowly down the Southern California freeways. What spread out next was an occasion that captivated the complete nation. A low-speed vehicle chase that interrupted normal programming and drew and envisioned 95 million viewers. The vision of Simpson inside the again of the Bronco shifting leisurely while accompanied by using a number of police automobiles quickly was one of the maximum iconic moments in American television records. Media helicopters followed the vehicle overhead and crowds accumulated alongside the freeways and on overpasses to observe as it all befell in real time. Inside the midst of it all, on his manner to Brentwood, the chase got here to take it the pleasant of a bizarre spectacle that meshed elements of suspense, tragedy, and celeb drama. Many of the ones looking puzzled how a person who become reputedly threatening self-harm and refusing to surrender may want to then plead not guilty to the slayers without raising any in addition suspicions. In other interviews, as in a single for Fox Television, Simpson has mentioned that he changed into emotionally beaten. He stated that looking this admiration from the public, which he had built up through the years, simply disappear overnight, had literally shattered him emotionally. Ron and Nicole were surely dead, and it's almost like they me, Simpson said. It laid bare simply how he considered the tragedy as a personal fall from grace, nearly as if his self-identity was misplaced along with theirs. Though the intercept turned into without gunfire, it introduced an incredibly dramatic and fascinating chapter to an already closely loaded case with public intrigue. Alternate of trial venue. To start with, the trial of O.J. Simpson becomes scheduled to take region in Santa Monica, the jurisdiction in which the slayings of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman came about. But, the venue turned into in the long run move to downtown Los Angeles, a choice that could later become a supply of vast hypothesis and debate. Many trust the trade become made to save you the appearance of racial bias, as Santa Monica changed into known to be a predominantly white community, which might have yielded a much less numerous jury. Because of the venue change, Simpson ended up being attempted via a predominantly black jury. 8 out of the 12 jurors had been African American. This demographic shift caused growing public and media speculation that the prosecution had intentionally selected a venue that might be extra favorable to Simpson, a well-known black defendant, in hopes of a fairer perception. Critics argued that this choice gave Simpson's protection team an advantage, especially as racial tensions surrounding the LAPD have been already excessive following the Rodney King incident just a few years earlier. William Hodgman, one of the predominant prosecutors, later contended the location in an interview with PBS. The relocation, he asserted, turned into now not racially stimulated, but for sensible grounds. In the course of that time, most foremost prison cases in L. County had been normally attempted downtown due to the fact at that time there have been facilities and efficiencies for undertaking trials. Consistent with Hodgman, the prosecution simply desired to press forward quick with this example and according filed expenses wherein the device would allow an extra expeditious route to trial. It became the pragmatic focus that this situation was going to be attempted right here, stated Hodgman, but much larger consequences as a ways as transferring the dynamics of the trial. It supposed extra than just the shape the jury's bloodline could take. It also started out to exchange public opinion as to whether or not the trial turned into a fair illustration of justice. The courtroom's vicinity added the whole lot into a very acquainted justice basket with excessive profile, obtained by the public. Keep your eyes on the court because what passed off behind the scenes with the jury selection is next degree. Prosecution method and overall performance. From the outset of the O.J. Simpson trial, the prosecution's approach raised worries amongst felony observers who felt it lacked coherence and consciousness. Led through Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, the prosecution made the uncommon selection to open now not with the wealth of bodily proof linking Simpson to the crime, but with his alleged history of home violence in the direction of Nicole Brown Simpson. At the same time as this can have aimed to establish a motive, it got here at the rate of building a strong evidentiary foundation early on and signaled a misplaced emphasis on individual over concrete proof. As the trial improved, this trouble have become more said. The prosecution often strayed into tangents, belabored minor points, and failed to continuously emphasize the most powerful elements of their case, including the DNA and forensic proof. Observers referred to that these missteps allowed the protection to undermine the narrative shape of the country's argument. Chu's Lance Ito was regularly criticized for no longer reigning inside the courtroom or assisting to streamline the trial, and his inability to govern these digressions contributed to a case that felt increasingly more disjointed and perplexing to the jury. Nearly all of these lapses had it in them for greater than a year, extending this trial for California into the longest criminal tale in records. Scott Terrace, author and legal professional, sees sluggish but scattered production by way of the prosecution as giving the jurors the view of a tale being overly constructed. As to stated, both your proof is overwhelming or you're laboring each day to make it appear like better than it is. Unfortunately for the prosecution, jurors seem to be adopting the latter view, interpreting the drawn-out case now not as a sign of energy, however as considered one of weak spot. In the long run, they might alternatively have had the evidence, but they overlooked the packaging and presentation of this proof, which became the strategic downfall. Additionally, critical findings of technology went woefully underplayed, relied too closely on such terrible witnesses as Mark Furman, and staged drama pretty wrongly, together with a glove demonstration, because the defendant gave a completely whole, emotionally appealing story, while the prosecution regularly regarded scattered and reactive in the end. In brief, the complete construct virtually brings to mind the fact that a negative criminal method could knock down an surprisingly evidence-encumbered case through nicely calibrated defense machinery, uncalled key witnesses. One of the most surprising missteps by the prosecution in the O.J. Simpson trial became its failure to call key witnesses who may want to have provided testimony. Two superb individuals, Jill Shivey and Pas Junis, had been inclined to testify about activities that befell shortly after the slayers. Their accounts, if presented to the jury, would possibly have strengthened the prosecution's case by means of offering first-hand observations that connected Simpson extra without delay to the timeline of the crime. Yet, neither was referred to as to the stand, and their tales have been overlooked of the court. Jill Shively claimed to have seen Simpson shortly after the slayers, driving unevenly and at excessive velocity, almost causing a twist of fate as he ran a crimson mile. Her account positioned Simpson near the crime scene across the critical time frame. However, after selling her tale to the tabloid show Difficult Copy for $5,000, prosecutor Marcia Clark decided that Shively's credibility were compromised. In spite of the relevance of her testimony, Clark viewed the media look as a severe lapse in judgment and selected now not to hazard placing her earlier than the jury. The second uncalled witness, Skip Junis, cited Simpson at L. Worldwide Airport rapidly after the slayers. According to Junis, he saw Simpson putting off something into a trash bin on the terminal. Even though it is not regarded what exactly Simpson disposed of, Junis notioned it to be something extensively incriminating. He informed Inner Edition how confused and annoyed he turned into at being left out without being called for testimony, announcing, "I don't apprehend why you haven't called me to speak approximately this." His exclusion left but every other hole for evidence in the case of prosecution. In these terms, the non-selections no longer simplest made the prosecution's tale weaker, however additionally appeared to indicate that vital evidence might be withheld by the kingdom or that the nation had misplaced faith in its very own witnesses. Except for those witnesses from an ordeal in which every piece of proof and testimony became scrutinized became strategic folly. Their absence denied the protection get right of entry to a good deal of the courtroom's narrative whilst depriving the jury of listening to the eyewitnesses who may add in addition assist to the timeline and situation surrounding Simpson's involvement. Acquittal and public reaction. Whilst the jury added a verdict of no longer responsible on October 3, 1995, it greatly surprised a country that had been deeply divided over the trial. Regardless of months of testimony, mounting forensic proof, and severe media insurance, O.J. Simpson changed into acquitted of the slayers of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. For plenty observers, this outcome appeared unfathomable. Given the bodily evidence, consisting of blood, hair, and DNA, public opinion strongly leaned in the direction of Simpson's guilt. But the jury, influenced by means of what they'd seen and heard over the course of the trial, remained unconvinced beyond an affordable doubt. Legal experts reading the case pointed to a couple of elements that contributed to the verdict. Most of the most sizable turned into the prosecution's lack of ability to present a clear, targeted narrative. Their approach lacked concord, and their selection to depend upon controversial figures like Mark Fuhrman alongside ill-conceived moments just like the glove demonstration drastically weakened their case. As PBS analysts mentioned, Simpson's defense team, nicknamed the Dream Group, became composed of experienced and strategic attorneys who effectively exploited the prosecution's missteps and painted Simpson as a victim of systemic injustice. In a touch upon the case, one of the legal specialists likened it to a soccer game in which the prosecution got here in too confident and unprepared. While the defense changed into disciplined and equipped with plans, the protection without problems raised a reasonable doubt by using wandering police credibility and the integrity of the evidence while encroaching on wider issues of racism and corruption in the Los Angeles Police Branch. O.J.'s hypothetical confession ebook. Years after his acquit, O.J. Simpson reignited public outrage and fascination with the case by announcing the discharge of a debatable ebook in 2007 titled If I Did It, This Is the Way It Passed Off. The ebook was framed as a hypothetical confession in which Simpson detailed how he might have committed the slayings of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman had he accomplished it. The concept itself became widely criticized, with many viewing it as a thinly veiled act of contrition cloaked in hypothetical language. Simpson's choice to jot down and sell any such ebook became perceived through many as deeply insensitive and unsettling, mainly to the sufferers' households. The general public's response was rapid and terrible, leading to good-sized backlash before the book can be launched. Simpson also participated in a Fox TV interview recorded alongside the book's promoting where he elaborated at the hypothetical events of the slayers. But, many viewers referred to that Simpson's language and demeanor made the scenario sense whatever but hypothetical, with quantities of the interview discovering as disturbingly actual. The tone and content blurred the road among fiction and confession, leaving many questioning why Simpson could offer this type of special account if he were actually innocent. In opposition to all odds, on July 23, 2007, ebook of the e-book changed into confined and the rights were transferred to Ronald Goldman's circle of relatives through the financial disaster court docket. The ruling would accordingly function price for civil damages still owed to the Goldman-owned family, whom Simpson become located chargeable for slaying in wrongful demise civil proceedings in 1997. The Goldmans later published the e-book with a modified identify, If I Did It, Confessions of a Kill. The new edition introduced a preface by way of Kim Goldman, protected a modified cover layout that rendered the word if nearly invisible at the same time as highlighting I Did It. Simpson had asserted that his purpose for writing the e-book was to financially guide his youngsters with Nicole. Still, all profits due to the ruling would be paid at once to the Goldman circle of relatives. The very life of the e-book would, rather than cease public hypothesis, in addition inflame theories surrounding Simpson's guilt and at ease itself in records as one of the strangest and maximum controversial after-trial episodes. For lots, If I Did, it was now not just every other literary oddity, but a haunting reminder of a case that by no means went away. Allegations of proof tampering. For the duration of the O.J. Simpson trial, the defense time and again raised allegations of evidence tampering, suggesting that the Los Angeles Police Department can also have planted or manipulated key physical evidence. Although the case seemed on the surface to be supported with the aid of compelling forensic hyperlinks which include bloody footprints, hair samples, and blood proof, the defense forged widespread doubt on how that proof was accumulated and presented. One foremost factor of rivalry became a bloody sock, which a protection professional claimed couldn't were worn at the time it became stained, suggesting viable put-up crime manipulation. Valuable to the defense's argument changed into the credibility fall apart of Detective Mark Fuhrman, who had found the notorious glove on Simpson's belongings. Whilst Fuhrman became later revealed to have used racial slurs and lied underneath oath, the defense claimed this became proof of potential misconduct. Throughout his second look at the stand, Fuhrman invoked the fifth modification when asked if he had ever planted proof within the case. That second delivered weight to the protection's narrative that the LAPD can also have framed Simpson, a concept that resonated with many jurors, in particular given the branch's records of racial bias and abuse allegations. The defense efficiently raised affordable doubt by way of revealing inconsistencies and mistakes related to the coping with of crime scene cloth with none conclusive evidence of proof planting, which the prosecution struggled to clear up absolutely. Mainly with Foreman's perjury shadow striking over their case, it changed into hard to absolutely brush aside these accusations. His refusal to answer some important questions made it less complicated for the jury to view the entire investigation's integrity with a barely skeptical, especially considering that the prosecution had in advance chosen to depend upon his testimony. Later, Shaw Chapman Hawley, who turned into Simpson's defense attorney, might give an explanation for compellingly the reason why policemen could need to tamper with evidence. Speaking to PBS, she argued that regulation enforcers believed Simpson turned into guilty, however they desired to make sure that the conviction would be a bit more airtight. What they did not expect, she said, changed into how very well the protection should tease out the one's ability manipulations and disclose them. Hence, harmless as they could sound, such allegations could further erode the prosecution's credibility towards the trial's conclusion. As a consequence, but innocent those allegations may sound, they would in addition damage the credibility of the prosecution by the point the trial concluded. It became no longer merely about what went into proof. It changed into additionally approximately what could not be trusted. In a case constructed on belief as a lot as proof, even a moderate whiff of doubt might swing the scales. Hang on for the following twist. The idea that key proof may additionally have been planted will forestall you on your tracks. O.J. attempting on the gloves. One of the most dramatic and consequential moments within the O.J. Simpson trial came when prosecutors asked Simpson to attempt at the bloody gloves believed to have been worn by using the slayer. The gloves had been determined one by one at the crime scene and the other on Simpson's belongings, and were introduced as key pieces of bodily proof. The prosecution, led by way of Christopher Darden, was hoping the demonstration could definitively link Simpson to the slayers. As an alternative, it turned into what many felony analysts later described as one among the biggest tactical mistakes inside the history of crook prosecution. At some point of the courtroom demonstration, Chu's Lance Ito informed Simpson to technique the jury and try to place on the gloves. As thousands and thousands watched on TV, Simpson appeared to war visibly with the gloves, showing that they did not fit properly. His palms seemed not able to slip all of the manner in, and he exaggerated the issue for effect. Whatever the living proof, the demonstration misfired extraordinarily, undermining what had apparently